Now.
Okay. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Good Advice Podcast. I love episodes like these because we have guests all over the nation, but whenever we get to interview someone who's a local business, it's one of my favorite things, especially if you're from Northwest Arkansas. You absolutely want to hear more about this brand. We're not sitting down with one guest today. We're actually sitting down with three guests, so I got my work cut out for me today. We're sitting down with Sarah Autry, Stephanie Peters, and Garrett Peters. They're the founders of Duncan Stone. It's a stationery company that wants to help you capture some of your best memories with your loved ones. You can find out more at duncanandstone.com. We're going to be talking about the entrepreneurial journey and all things fun that come with running a business. Guys, it's so great to have you on the show today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having us, Blake.
All right, so I don't know exactly who to start with because it's not usual that I have everyone on the show. You're all three, you're founders of Duncan Stone. Tell me a little bit about who does what and what's life like, the three of you running this business.
Well, that has actually changed a lot over the years. I mean, we started in 2019, so I think tell a little bit maybe of the backstory so then you can see our lanes. It's probably one of the better places to start.
Yeah.
Okay. So what year did you say you guys started?
2019 was whenever we were like, we're going to really start this thing. What do we want to call it? You know, what should we call it? And, you know, what do we want to be about? And so during that conversation, we were having lots of family dinners with Garland, which is Sarah's husband, and just kind of talking about this product that Sarah had created, the prayer pregnancy cards. And we kept being like, you should really manufacture this and grow this. You know, you could really do it. And she's like, absolutely not. That sounds miserable. I like to create pretty things, and that's what I do. You know, and Garrett at the time was working for a broker team here in Northwest Arkansas. And he really always wanted to grow a brand. And I was seeing this like conversation happening. I'm like, they're never going to start a company together. Like they need me to step it into my help. And so one day I was like, Sarah, you know, like I want to help you start this business. I've been an entrepreneur and have been doing more real estate things and had just kind of closed some projects that I was working on. And I was bored, like creatively bored. Yeah. And so I was like, I love learning new things and things that I have no idea what I'm doing. It really like fires me up to try to learn that skill set. And so I was like, let me jump in and help you with this. And like, let's start this company together. And so that's where kind of we were out, you know, sketching with sidewalk chalk, talking about products.
With
and
our toddlers running
with
around.
our toddlers hanging on our necks, you know. At the time, I think they might've been, Collins and Drake were like 2. And so we were just having conversations about it and thinking about what could be as we were playing with chalk and our toddlers.
So take me back to like those early conversations. Stephanie, you know, Stephanie's telling you got to sell this.
Yeah.
This is, I'm assuming the original product was really great.
Yeah, I loved it. And I really believed in it, but she was like, I'm not really sure.
Well, I was selling them on Etsy. I was packaging them by hand. So it's like 40 cards that describe your baby's growth and how you can pray for them. So I was ordering 40 different sets of individual postcards and then creating sets and then packaging sets.
And I was like watching and be like, this is not efficient.
Right. And she's like, you know, we could do this more efficiently. I'm like, yeah, but then I got to like contact production people and like, I don't.
Seems like a lot of work.
Yeah, I was like, no, I don't want that. And so she's basically said, what if I do that? So the original conversations were us going, what do we see? We're 2 moms. She has 3 kids. I have 3 kids. And we're going, what are the holes in the market? What are the things that we wish had been made for us when we were having babies that we're going, we could do that better. So we started literally sketching out, we've got these pregnancy prayer cards. What would it look like to jump into the journal realm? So we're literally drawing on the sidewalk. What would the layout of a journal look like? What would a mom like us, what would be the way for them to be able to fill out a journal and keep their memories, but it's not taking up all their time because they're already changing diapers and running around and buying groceries and cutting up tiny hot dogs. And like, they don't have time to be doing all this. So after that, Stephanie found an organization that was called Paper Camp. It was like a training weekend for people who are involved in stationery. So we flew out to LA. That was the fall of 2019.
And at the time we were like, I guess that we should have a company name. And like,
We're
invested in something that doesn't exist. So we should probably now be more serious about this, you know? And so that made us like, so I got out a huge, air fryer box and opened it up on my floor with a Sharpie marker, and all 4 of us, Garland included, sat down and we're like, okay, like what's going to be our year game plan?
Did you share this on social media?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember
Before.
seeing
I have
this.
before.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like the cardboard or something.
Oh yeah, I still have it in a closet.
remember
It's
seeing
it's
it.
a relic.
Functional.
It's a
Well, I
relic.
remember thinking like, that's a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
lot
I
they're
mean,
doing.
that was in 2019 when we barely had a company name, and we were like,
Yeah.
Garrett was like, here are all the pieces that we actually have to add to this to make it work, and so he brought a lot of knowledge of things that he had experienced in his corporate job into that conversation, and so where we were like, let's just make things that moms are practical for them and pretty, and like he was like, well, there's a lot more to it than just that.
Was there a point that you guys it started feeling like, because it was very creative and obviously very exciting, was there a point where you were like, oh, we're entrepreneurs, we're business owners, like kind of like the formal like step into that role? Like did that happen at some point, or did you kind of in retrospect, oh, I guess we are business owners?
Yeah, I think in that season what defined it was putting our kids to sleep and then continuing to work. Like that was the season where we're like, oh, we're really entrepreneurs. Like our kids just went to bed and now we have our laptops open and we're researching and digging into Amazon through Jungle Scout of like who's selling products like ours? What are they selling for? How many units are they selling in a month? You know, like researching the market. And that's what I was digging into, and everyone kind of had their own lane of what they were doing. But working at night really defined like, oh, we're entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Well, explain. Here's one question I have for you is, a lot of times when people are thinking about the product that they want to roll out, they immediately go to, well, what I'm selling is better. But then when you actually like look at the products, it's not really actually better. It's just they like it because it's theirs. Y'all not only were selling something that you thought was better, it actually was better. Was there some kind of hidden analysis that you did, or you just are just so qualified in your position that you were like, I just know it's better? I mean, help me understand kind of the nuance of, because there's a lot of people listening who they've walked through that line of thinking of like, I know it's better, but then once they started launching it or working with it, it doesn't get quite the traction that they expected.
Yeah.
So what was different about your situation?
So before we launched Duncan Stone, I had been selling on Etsy for probably 7 or 8 years, doing stationery, like invitations and stuff. So I already had my foot in the door of that general market.
Tremendous experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so what I had realized from that time when I was doing invitations and whatnot was there are a lot of people trying to replicate what someone else is already doing really well, and you're always going to come in second place because they did it before you and they're already doing it really well. So coming into launching Duncan Stone, I really wanted to actually find the holes in the market, knowing that like reproducing the wheel may not actually happen. Someone has done something for baby books before, but how can we actually launch something that's unique so we're not competing to be the second best for someone who launched first, but actually being the first person to launch a new type of product. So like a good example would be this past fall this past spring we launched a teacher memory book, and so it's a book specifically just to help. We have all these, Stephanie and I, our backstories, we actually both got our master's degree in elementary education, and then we both hated teaching, so we call ourselves the teaching dropouts. But we realized through that experience how much hard work teachers put in, how dedicated they are. Like they're so passionate about it. And we went, you know what? No one's doing anything for the teachers that want to save their memories. And so we were like, that's not a thing that's out there. And it's been such a great product because we don't really have competition. And so we've just really tried to be like where's the hole? What can we do first?
Yeah, what doesn't exist instead of repeating it.
Yeah. Well, I love how you're framing it also from like your customer's perspective of like, what are they not getting, as opposed to, again, a lot of times in the entrepreneurial space, it's like, I'm so passionate about this one thing, even though everyone's already doing it. And so the fact that you guys are already you were already from the start thinking about what your customer wasn't getting, I'm sure that has a lot to do with your success as well.
Yeah. And I think we also talked a lot about not just, how nice the journals may be and what is the recipient going to feel when they get it, but we went to the back end psychology of what is the giver going to get out of it. And so we kind of almost marketed not just to, because so many of our journals are highly giftable. You're buying them for weddings or baby showers, different occasions, and going, okay, but how can we market to the buyer who's going to give it to someone? It's not about how the recipient feels. It's how does it make the buyer feel to give a really thoughtful and unique gift, and going, okay, let's get inside that person's head. What do they want to do? Because it's in the end, it's going to make them feel good and the recipient feel good.
Right.
And they're the ones spending the money.
Right.
I would say that like Sarah and Stephanie have done a great job at doing a ton of research and figuring out what's out there. And as the more that we've grown as well, like customer feedback, like we have a long list of potential items we may want to go create, but we're always filtering them through, like, does this even make sense? Would this work? Like doing research like that. And we've launched plenty of items as well that are like, didn't go well.
Wah,
Like
wah.
kind of you thought it might do well, and there was a market for it, but it's just wasn't great, you know? So, they've done a great job at figuring out what the gaps are, you know, which is cool.
How do you guys stay unemotionally attached from of a product that
Sarah doesn't.
I am for sure.
How do you do that?
It is so much harder for me. Like, I am definitely way more emotionally invested in the products. They're kind of like, but what about the sales numbers? And what's the
Yeah, I'm like, do you know how much this takes up
No
on
one's
that
buying
container
those.
and how much weight that is on that container, and then it limits us on what we can bring into the States. You know, like
I think there's definitely been like a.
I'm like, I think we should cut that, and she's like, absolutely not.
There's been some like thickening of the skin on seeing
Sure.
things that are like, oh, that didn't do as well, you know, and really more the learning curve of then going, that's okay. Like, what are we going to learn from that? Why didn't it do well? So that on the next thing we launch. So for instance, one thing we've learned is if we shoot for too broad of an audience, if a product we're launching is for too many people, and in our estimation initially it was like, great, we have way more of a market capture because all of these different people can use it. But then in the end, no one actually knew how to use it because it was too broad. And we're like, okay, so now we know we have to be very much more specific in what we're designing and the message that is getting across to the customer, so they know this is for me. I need this.
So you guys obviously, I mean, you have a handful of really amazing products, and I've seen them. I mean, I have 2 kids myself, and I've looked at your products and thought, oh my gosh, I wish I had found this when I was first. My wife is going through her pregnancy. But for the products that don't quite get the traction you want, and not just related to products, but just also, I mean, as entrepreneurs, you're talking to friends, you're talking to family members. You know, we mentioned that thickening of skin. What's it like, not just with your customers, not just with your products, but also just people you interact with? For the 3 of you, I mean, Garrett, I know you quit your full-time job to do this, which is very exciting. But I remember when I quit my job to do my business, I mean, I had someone who was like, what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, are you
For
nuts?
Sure. For sure.
So how have the 3 of you guys kind of developed that sense of resilience, and especially on days where, or even months where the business is not building the traction you expect? Like, what does that process look like?
Yeah, I'll start. I mean, I've gone through a lot of different seasons through the business. So like back to 2019, 2020, early on launching, we were just focused on trying to push the ball forward. It was just like, I didn't think we were much business owners. It was just like, we're starting this thing and we need to just figure it out. I think that when I left my full-time job to come on to do this in January of 2020, so not quite 2 years.
You mean
And
2021?
2021, sorry, 2021.
Okay.
That was a tough year for me. You know, it was developed, to your question about resiliency, it was like, I didn't know I had never owned my own business. I had never worked for myself. It was an incredible like transition that I had to go through. You know, it took a long time for me to like really figure out what the heck I was doing.
So what was that process like for you? I mean,
yeah, it was challenging. It was trying to figure out what to focus on. Where do I spend my time? What area of the business do I need to focus on? It was a challenge. I think we were still so young. I mean, we had only been selling products for about a year,
Maybe a year.
almost a year. And so we were still so small, and I was just stressed. I'm like, I've left this is a full-time gig for us now, you know.
If this doesn't work, then
This is like, we got to figure this out.
Right.
yeah.
And so there was, there's this, it's ethereal that the experience I had was like, my schedule, I have to figure that out. I got to figure out how to work. How do we work as a team? You know, where do I spend my time? Like, there's just a mess of things that I had to go
you're
through.
not having quarterly reviews with a boss saying you're doing really great.
Yeah.
You know,
How do you
like,
even
your
define
company is
success?
really growing because look at this and this and this, and like you're not having somebody, above you in a role from that job saying you've done really well.
Yeah.
Or you're, like he's like, how do I even measure, what's happening? And then during that season too, in 2021 in January, like our company, I had just forecasted out the year, and I'm like, you know, and I saw his stress. He walked into the kitchen right after Christmas break had finished, and he was like, both my eyes are twitching. I'm so stressed. Like, I'm working full time over here, but yet Duncan Stone needs me almost full time over here. Like, something has to give. And so I was like, just go quit your job. And he was like, are you serious? Because at the time, like, we couldn't pay him because Duncan Stone at the time couldn't pay him salary. So he was looking at me being like, you're nuts. Like, why would I do that? You know, I'm like, well, something has to give. Duncan Stone cannot afford to lose you. Like, you're such a pivotal asset to this company to grow. Like, if we actually want to do the numbers that I think that we can do, we need you on this team fully focused. And so he was like, okay. And so he went and talked to some of his buddies and then he put his 2-week notice, I think, that day the next day after that conversation in the kitchen. And so, but at the time we couldn't pay him. I mean, it took maybe 3 months or so. But I'm like, we'll just live on savings. Like, and we'll just be really frugal with what we're spending, and let's just see what happens. I mean, we also live in a community where his role and his job that he was doing, if it failed, we kind of had a safety net of like, you're so well connected in the community. You worked in this, you know, like, so that was a safety net for us to know he could always go find another job doing something similar. But I'm like, why not? Like, why would you not take the risk? I'm very much a jumper, if you can't tell. Like,
pusher. She's a pusher.
I'm a pusher. I'm like,
pushed me off the edge.
I'm like, you will go da-da-da. You're gonna, you know, like, I'm just kind of like, it doesn't scare me. Like, I'm just kind of like, I'm very optimistic about things naturally. Like, so I'm like, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? Oh, that's okay if that happens. You know.
We talked a little bit before we hit record that, you know, whenever you start a business, there's people who are very excited for you, and then there's also people who are, even when you didn't ask, are very quick to let you know how nervous they are for you.
For sure.
What's it been like? Just, you know, get on that topic of resilience, but also just like kind of buffering comments or feedback, or, you know, because the entrepreneurial journey, as we know, it's extremely sexy on social media. I talked to a guy one time who's like, man, I'm just so desperate to be an entrepreneur. And I was like, well, what do you know, and I'm thinking like, I'm working so many hours, like I'm, you know, not sleeping. It's terrible. But I'm like, so what do you think that means? And he was like, oh, it's great. You sleep in as late as you want and no one tells you what to do. I was like, wow. Okay. I need to figure that out.
It sounds like a great gig.
But so you're getting all this feedback, all these comments. Like, how do you guys kind of parse through it? And like, what's that process look like as people interact with you, friends, family, what have you?
I think we probably had different experience of how that played out for me, because I was a stay-at-home mom and had already been kind of trying to do these side hustles, stationery and whatnot. When we launched Duncan Stone, it was kind of like, oh, that's so cute. Like, you're starting a company, you know, and no one was really taking me seriously, which was okay. But, you know, I'd get questions from family members saying, you know, like, so how's the cards going? And I'm like, do you think I sell like Pokemon cards? Like, you don't understand what I'm doing, or the fact that like I'm staying home, which is a full-time job in itself with 3 kids, of like managing all of them, and on the side and in the evenings and at nap time, I'm working. And so dealing with kind of just grin and bear it of like, okay, well, I'm just, one day I'll show you, you'll get it sometime. But I'm actually working really hard for this cute job that I'm doing.
Yeah, that's interesting, because like my experience was a little bit different.
Corporate,
in the sense of when I first told, even when we were early on thinking about starting this business, which was truly a side, I was looking at it as a side hustle of sorts of like, I have a vision that this could one day be a thing that we do, but we didn't know.
Good supplemental income. Like a little something
like
on the
it
side.
could be fun. It was, and there's tons of the process that were super fun and exciting, and like us figuring out how to run a business has been really cool. But I mean, when I told some of my good friends early on, they're like, you're going to sell journals. Like, there were like baby books, pregnancy books. I mean, they just couldn't even fathom what was going on. And I'm like, yeah, that's the plan. You know, we're going to do it. And, you know, and, you know, for us, fast forward to 2021, you know, quitting my job to do this business full time and just grinding to try to get it going. There's my level of success for the first year was like, I don't have to go get another job. That was basically what I was like. At the end of the year, if I don't have to go get another job, yay. Like, that was good. We're figuring this out. But even to today, we have good friends and even family members that are like, you guys are still doing the books thing, you know? And so I have now become, and I tell Sarah and Stephanie a lot, and our team, like, I'm kind of out to prove, like, there's something in me that wants to prove that everyone wrong. Not that they just think that this is a small little thing. And I'm like, we want to create a big business to show the world, you know, and that might be my own issues, probably.
Well, and I've noticed when people have never like walked into the world of like entrepreneurship or business, it can be hard for someone like to conceptually understand someone quitting a job, starting a business, you know, sticking with something also. I mean, we live in a world where people often change jobs very quickly. And not to mention also the fact that you guys, you started a business right before a teeny tiny thing called COVID.
Yeah, exactly.
So what was 2020 like for you guys?
Oh my gosh.
Man, so back to fall of 2019 when we're starting to develop product and thinking through ideas and naming ourselves, you know, which Duncan and Stone, we tossed around a lot of names, but Stephanie and I actually met at this point 12 years ago. We were both working for a nonprofit in Fayetteville. And as we were looking through names, you know, so much of our business was founded on our connection as best friends and then walking through motherhood together. And so we named it after the corner that building sits at, Duncan and Stone. So that was where the name came from. And so then when we were moving into the spring, we're like, okay, we did it. We developed these products. We have a brand now. You know, we've got a pitch.
So easy now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's great.
We got our production partners lined up. We actually got like that first unboxing of product in hand and high-fiving. And we're like, okay, let's put it live. We started on Etsy and our website, and that was end of February 2020. And we had no idea. 2 weeks later, our kids are home permanently for the rest of the year. You know, no school. Now we're homeschooling and launching a business. And we're like, what's going to happen? Like, no one's buying anything because nobody knows. That was our fear.
Our fear.
But what we found out was it actually worked in our favor because everyone went, I'm stuck at home. I have nothing else to do. I should finally fill out that baby book I never got around to. This is a perfect time to buy. We had a legacy journal for grandparents to write out their life story. So they're going, I'm worried that my grandparent might get sick. What if I don't ever get to hear about their life story before something could happen? So we've got people from all over the U.S. going, I've got to get these stories written down. And so for us, our business actually took off in a really surprising way.
Yeah.
Well, and the other side part of that is that Sarah in 2019, whenever we're writing on the board and we're saying, what's your goal for the company? And she's like, I just want to make my deductible. Like, I just want to make enough money for the whole year to meet our deductible. I was like, oh, that's so cute. That's cute. You know, and so, but she was very dependent at this time on her Etsy business. Like, her husband's a pastor. It was a supplemental income for them to make their bills. Like, for her to have that stationery company that was all built around baby showers and weddings and invitations to events. And
Gosh,
so
I forgot about that. You just said that. I'm having PTSD right now.
And so she was so like, I mean, the spring for her was like the Super Bowl for them to make their bills.
Yeah.
And so for us to launch and sell our very first product in February of 2020, and then Duncan and Stone kind of took off to the point where her stationery company just completely crumbled because there was nobody having any events. And so it was really cool to see the provision of Duncan and Stone step in and actually start making a profit very, very early, enough to cover the deductible for that year, to be like, it met the need. So,
Was there ever a point, I mean, so the business takes off during COVID. You have a lot of fear and worry in the marketplace. People who are probably even giving you guys advice on, hey, get a backup plan, and yet Duncan and Stone is doing well. How do you guys typically respond to setbacks in your business? Is it something that you each kind of deal with separately? Do you have different personalities for how you deal with it?
Definitely
she
different
cries.
personality.
I'm like, it's okay.
Will we tell them about?
Garrett gets mad.
I get
He gets mad. She gets sad, and I'm like, this is why I'm here. I'm HR, guys.
Well, here's
HR
one
hat.
One example for our listeners. I don't know if this was actually a big deal or not, but I know recently you guys had a copycat.
Yeah,
we someone who basically took your product and duplicated it, sold it on Amazon, and basically ripped you off. I don't know if that felt like a setback or not, or if it was more like a, wow, we're actually pretty good since someone's
flattery.
Sarah was, for the record, Sarah was super
when
mad
it
about
comes
that.
to creative and people taking my like creative ideas, I'm like, oh, I will throw down. We are not going. I'm like, who are we calling? What are we doing?
Yeah, we were immediately,
I'm buying the
by
product,
way.
leaving my own reviews.
Yeah, we immediately got after that one.
No, I think of setbacks earlier. I mean, even before that, she's gonna be like, so you know, our very first, we launched with the pre-pregnancy cards and Dear Baby, which is the journaling format for the pre-pregnancy cards. And then our next item that we're like, okay, we're growing, like we're gonna bring in this new item of Dear Son and Dear Daughter. It came in, it was beautiful, and then Sarah went to take pictures of it and called me in sobbing tears and was like,
well, before you go on, we had put in so much work, so much work to these journals. They're childhood keepsake journals
expensive.
from birth to 18. They're much bigger physically. So this was for sure our biggest financial, like, throwing down the money towards something. And because we were a new company, it's like you're putting money in as it's coming in, and so you're not really making much. So you're really hedging your bets on, like,
Right.
okay, here's our profit, we're putting it right back into new product, let's hope that sells well.
Right.
So this was like our biggest purchase, and they arrive and we're like, oh my gosh, they're beautiful. You know, we're flipping through the pages. It's exactly what we want. Dear son, dear daughter. And after a day of us like looking through this, I look on the spine of Dear Daughter and it says Dear Dother. The G and the T are transposed. And I was like, no, we have like thousands of these that we've shipped over, that we've paid
They were
for,
going,
that we
yeah.
can't use
Already printed,
any of
coming
them.
over.
And so I like call Stephanie in tears. I don't even know if you could like understand. I'm like, it says Dear Daughter. You're like, what's a Dother? Like, wait, I'm like, just look at the picture. And she didn't see it at first. And then after it clicked, she was like, oh no. So that was probably the first like
That was a
devastating
challenge.
blow of the business of that was a total waste.
No, yeah.
What do we do? How many more can we afford to reorder?
Like I was like trying to pull them. I was like trying to contact, you know, our printer partner and be like, can you pull them before they go to ship, before they go into the port? And he's like, no, they're already have reached port. Like they're already on the vessel. Like
Then we're
there's
trying
nothing
to
we can
find,
do
can
about
someone
it.
recase them? Can we, you know, what
Yeah.
would that cost?
Were they going to customers yet, or were they?
Not
No,
yet.
no, they were just
Those
coming
are
to
your
us
distributors. Okay.
in our garage.
Oh,
The
yeah.
warehouse.
They've never been
The
to
warehouse.
a customer.
Duncan Stone International from the garage of Peter's house.
And I love it that our printer partner thinks that that's our office. It's our office.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, that's cute. It's just our garage.
Oh, well, for that, in that situation, we all deal with it differently, like in their own different way. Like, I was just thinking about the financials of that situation of like, I'm thinking that we're just going to sell the stuff. I'm like, I mean, full
it out there, it's
transparency.
fine, and we're
I'm
like,
like, what's the big deal? The customer probably won't even know. And the girls are like, no,
gosh.
we're not. We're a brand new business.
Yeah.
Like, it will tarnish our brand name. And
Right.
and it was the right move for sure. But I was just like, we're not gonna make it. Like, this is like, you know, this is a devastating thing, you know. So I'm like so
Worst case
stressed
scenario.
out early on of what's going on with this small thing we're doing. It was I
It's
didn't
funny.
handle it.
well,
yeah.
and
I
keep in
wasn't
mind,
stressed
we're
at all.
all
Stephanie was not stressed.
No, I was like,
Are you cool as a cucumber
She's
always?
so-
or
oh,
what?
No,
yeah.
I mean,
Oh.
I stay pretty. I can get feisty and I have my own roller coaster of things, but this didn't really faze me. I was like, it's okay. Like, we're gonna have mistakes. Like, let's just look at the numbers of it. Let's see how much it actually. You know, the biggest loss is that we don't have it here to launch it with Dear Son. It's like that to me was a bigger loss than the product itself.
Yeah.
Stephanie's so great at seeing the long-term vision. So for her, you know, Garrett and I are going, oh my gosh, the finances from Garrett's
Yeah.
perspective. I'm going, oh my gosh, this was on me. I'm creative. Now I've let my people down. But Stephanie's going, but I already know this is, you know, whatever month. She's like, but I'm already looking at 6-12 months out, and I know this is not going to be a big deal then. So it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Which is great because it's like the steadying force of me and Garrett
Yeah,
being
for
explosive on
sure.
both ends.
For
She
sure.
kind
I'm like, it's
of
gonna be
helped
okay,
it.
guys.
Yeah.
She's the glue that holds us together for sure.
I'm like, the jelly peanut butter.
Speaking of this mistake, you know, a lot of businesses, unfortunately, they would go the route of not even so much as like our customers aren't going to care, but like, hey, this is such a big expense, like we have to make some money back on it. I like that you guys were like, no, like it's important to keep quality as quality should be. Is there any insight there on, I guess, people listening who are tempted to, you know, reduce the quality of what they're selling or cut corners? I mean, we all know not to do it, right? I mean, I've never met anyone who was like, I just love cutting corners. In my business. But we also know like the challenges of exactly what you're talking about, where it becomes very gray.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, my cash flow is really tight. We spent a ton of money. This could really hurt us.
Yeah.
So we're gonna shave off a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And
That's a
so
good
like,
question.
what's your take on even in the mess of that, staying focused on quality, and it's going to be our brand's going to be what we want it to be. I mean, I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah. Sarah, I'll let Sarah talk to that.
Yeah,
Like
I think
from a brand values perspective.
exactly. We, from the very beginning, again, back to where do we fit in the market share? We knew that there are lots of people, like if you go on Amazon and look for baby book, you know, you're going to get things for $7.99, little paperback. And I'm not hating on those, but we knew we wanted to make a product that wasn't there. And for us, that meant something that's high end, that's you're not going to toss into a bin at some point and be like, I don't really care, that wasn't all that nice anyway. That sits out on your coffee table because it's so beautiful. You're like, I want people to see this thing that I bought. And that's going to be high enough quality that you can actually pass down for generations to come. So for us, selling a Dear Daughter went against all of our core strategies of what's differentiating us from the rest of the market.
Right.
And we knew that if we started the business at the beginning already compromising on what we were selling to people sets us apart, that in the long term we were going to have no customer buy-in because it's going to look like what you're selling is not actually what you're pitching.
Right. Right.
Right.
That's a good point.
And we've had issues with, you know, a print mistake that wasn't our mistake, that just the printer, you know, flipped a page upside down, or you know, that's different to have
Stuff
a review
happens.
that's like a, you know, one off. But it would be a completely different thing if everyone's like, these are all Dear Daughter.
Yeah.
Like,
I would also say for a small business launching, customer reviews were so imperative because people don't know us. We don't have any buy-in.
Yeah.
So knowing, even like what you were saying with if someone, you know, gets a slight mess up or there's a dent on a corner of a book or something, we are always very quick, even if it's not our problem. If it's a shipping, it got damaged, whatever, or even things get lost, we're like, we'll send you a new one because we so prioritize customer service. And that was painful in the beginning. When you know someone has UPS or especially that 2020 pandemic.
USPS
Yes,
debacle
that
of
Christmas season
terrible.
where USPS delivered nothing for months.
gosh, it
And
was
people
terrible.
they're mad at us, even though it's not our fault. And it was so painful to be like, I will send you a new one. That means I have just lost out on netting an extra $30 or whatever. But in the end, to get that review where they say, man, this seller was so great to work with, I will be back again. Like they fixed this problem. That has been, in the long run, worth it to
Right.
go.
It was worth the $30 that you
Yes,
sure.
to keep that integrity and keep the customer satisfaction as a top priority, because now we are very trustworthy as a brand.
Well, I like how you describe it too, because again, there's business owners out there who they want to be something like that, but they think it's only possible for like an established brand. So hearing you tell that story of like, we just decided we were going to do it no matter what, I think that's empowering. It's the same, it's similar to stories where we talk about on the podcast, like paying employees well. And people will sometimes hear those kind of episodes and they'll be like, yeah, I will once my business is really great.
Yeah.
And it's
Right.
like, no, these are core principles you stand by.
Yeah.
It is, by the way, really great kind of hearing you guys. You guys seem very at ease, like working together, talking together. I don't know how familiar you are in like the startup entrepreneurial space in terms of other organizations that have multiple co-founders, but it's kind of a clicheism that co-founders typically end up kind of like a married couple fighting. Well, in y'all's case, you actually are a married couple.
Here we are. We should buy
But,
six of them.
You know, disagreements on who owns what,
Yeah.
struggles with like, okay, the brand can go this way or that way, and they want to go, it's different directions basically. How have you guys figured out who owns what? And more importantly, when you get to a pain point, how do you decide the answer?
That's a good
Who's
question.
right, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, I'll start. I will tell you, like that was a concern of mine for sure early on. Was like in 2019 when we're like, hey, let's start a business together. I went to mentors and other people I'd worked with that I'd worked for and asked them feedback about it, and basically all of them said it was a bad idea. Seriously,
Because we were friends.
because we were friends.
I mean, so
Right.
much
Like
of our,
some of our best friends.
Friends and also married, and you and Garland married.
Yes.
I was less
Right.
concerned about me and Stephanie, honestly, because
You're
we
worried
had-
about Sarah and Garland.
yeah. Well, it was like, I don't want to ruin a friendship.
Right.
Like, is it really worth it for us to start a side hustle, a thing that's going to potentially ruin a friendship? And we didn't want that. So early on, I mean, we highly considered it and what that looked like. But then I think that one thing that we've done pretty well, I think over the years, is prioritize our friendship first. Is like, yes, it would be easy for us to talk about just Duncan and Stone all the time, like every day, and especially for us at our house because we're married, but we're trying to prioritize like our friendship and relationships that we have. And then we've now, because we've grown and like we have business time and like we have office hours, and obviously if there's things that come up, we'll talk about the business, but finding the boundaries of,
We've really had to grow into that.
We had to step into that.
I mean, we've had for sure pain points where.
Oh, yeah.
But I think us setting up an S Corp together, going in and legally going, here's everyone's shares.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Sarah and I have a little, like 1% more than the guy, so it's a woman-owned business. Just saying. I keep hitting my mic. Sorry about that. So I think setting it up and structuring it really well in the beginning, and spending the money on a lawyer to go, here is the documents. We all agree to this.
We have to create some.
We created a lot of
clarity,
structure in the very
definition,
beginning,
right.
even whenever we didn't even have much of a company. Like,
yeah.
I mean,
Or sales.
Or sales. I mean, that was one of the things that we invested in really early, was having a legal person sit down with us and go, here's how we're structuring our company.
Yeah.
Here's everyone's stakes. Here's everyone's stocks. Like, we're very intentional about that. And then we had a lot of conversations about what we see the long-term vision of the company looking like, even early. Like, where do we want it to go? What do we dream for it to be in 5 or 10 years? And to see, like, are we all seeing the same picture?
Yeah.
And then one of the things that I think really helped, we came up with, we had a business team meeting, was it 2021, January?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In January 2021, we all went out. We went to Bentonville for 2 days, and all we did was talk Duncan and Stone. But we, at that time, structured our company for salaries of, like, we see it like a pie. So 100% of a pie is what is the work against the business. And so we looked at what percentage are you working against the business, and that's how we structure payout. So if we're going to pay out in a month $10,000 in salary or $20,000 in salary, we're looking at, okay, if Sarah's working 40% against the business or 30%, she's going to get a percentage of our payout in salary. So it wasn't like, you're getting more than me. It's like, well, yeah, because you work more against the business than I do. So, and so everyone, that's how we structured our pay. And I think that really helped solve a lot of tension that could have been there and that was starting to build. And then as a shareholder, we all get paid out the same distributions, like based upon our stocks. So
I really admire that, because that whole process of really setting the expectations, a lot of, my stomach is really growling.
Should have had that breakfast.
I should have had breakfast. A lot of what ends up happening is you say like something like, yeah, let's speak to an attorney. Like, let's get this stuff kind of squared away. And someone might respond with like, oh, well, we're family, we're friends. Like, what do we
need to settle?
What do we need to, yeah, exactly. And so I think it's just interesting that you guys went that route originally and kind of got all of the potential drama out of the way, I guess.
Yeah.
we put it on the table before it was happening.
Right.
A lot of it.
Yeah,
I
not
mean,
that we
we've had
haven't
our
had
own-
our own. We've had our own counseling sessions, group counseling
I've had
sessions.
to, for sure. Absolutely. I think that, it's an interesting dynamic that we have, and it's a unique situation with two married couples, and us three being the primary like workers for our business, like having to navigate the relational situation of, and they've had to come to me many a times, especially last year, of, hey, Garrett, you're being a psycho. Like, you need to settle down, because the expectations that I may put against my team members is, some of it might be, unreasonable for sure. And so we've had to work through a lot of that as business partners, and setting aside you have to kind of draw those kind of boundaries of, hey, we need to have some business discussions around expectations and roles and things like that. And it's something that we've done more of as we've grown, and it's, I wasn't really great at it for the first couple of years, probably.
I think what was interesting was the learning curve for us was not what's your lane. We very naturally had completely different giftings and passion points within our business. They have zero desire to do anything creative. They don't want to learn InDesign. They don't want to take
I have
pictures.
opinions on things every
No.
now and then.
Right.
And she's
No.
like, really?
Yes, but when Stephanie's doing projections or ordering with our production partners, I'm like, please don't ask me another question about a spreadsheet. I don't know. My eyes are crossing. I believe in you. You can do it.
Right.
And then when Garrett's doing sales, and I'm like, I would be terrified to call someone and be like, hey, does your business want to buy our stuff?
Yeah.
So it was really easy, I think, to delineate our lanes and like our tasks. I think what was more of the hurdle was figuring out, as both owners and employees, our employee lanes were super clear. Our owner lanes for what's our vision, like to what Garrett was saying of like his drive versus my drive, or what I prioritize versus what Stephanie prioritizes. That was where the pain points came of going, we know what we signed up to do task-wise, but then figuring out, are we in agreement on how that's going to happen, and the pace that that's going to happen would be like, wait a minute, we're not seeing this in the same.
Yeah, the pace is probably different. Like what you saw in the pace and what he saw in the pace were very different.
Because Garrett was coming from corporate world, where it's like 9 to 5 and 9 to 7. Sometimes, you just work until you get it done. And I'm like, wait a minute, I have 3 kids at home. I can't just work till I get it done. I'm also doing all the other things.
And the more that he would sell and push, and the more content that's needed, and the more creative that's needed, which is more on her plate. So the harder he ran, the more work it gave.
Right.
Yep.
And so the balance there became very tricky and created a lot of tension to be like, okay, we got to really sit down. And Garrett at the same time, I was like, you need a detox off of the work world that you have been living in. So we had a lot of driveway come to Jesus moments where I'm like, you know what you should do today? Nothing. You need to get your head clear.
Yes, exactly.
You need to go to the woods without your cell phone for 24 hours and not talk to anybody. It would be really good for you. And then come back and you'll be way more productive. And you can do that. And you've been working crazy amounts of hours. You have put in enough hours to take a day off. Go do that. And so he's like, I just don't know how to do that. I don't know how to stop. This is just the pace I've been running at for so many years that it became ingrained into him. And so 2021 was like a reset in our house and in our work. And I think this year has actually worked so much better than it has. We're learning and we're growing and we're adapting to what everyone needs.
Well, I'm really curious about how you guys have developed your sense of work-life balance. Just because Garrett, I can really relate to that of the days where my toddler is crazy. And it's I did not get of the list of 20 things, I got one done. And so I feel really personally stressed about, what I'm accomplishing. How have the 3 of you guys, what's that process of work-life balance look like? And, you're in this very exciting business that's growing and it's a great product. I mean, how do you kind of find the balance between, this week we're going all in. This week we're just, enjoying it and taking time for ourselves.
Yeah. I think it's different for each of us because of our roles. So for me, I've had to learn that it's pretty seasonal. So that will mean when I'm creating new product, that's happening in one part of the year. And then the opposite end of the year when we're launching new product, my workload is unending, and because everything's very time sensitive. We have to meet these deadlines. We have to launch this stuff. It requires so much of me. So I've had to learn to be okay with then in the other seasons going, I might only be working part-time in this season because I know I need to not burn out because I'm coming up on another heavy season. So mine's less of day to day and more of you're going to have to do this for 2 months and it's going to be really hard and you're going to walk away. I'll call Stephanie when I'm in the middle of, I'll get super excited, research the new journal, start designing it, get into the tedious of which graphic of this flower do we really love best. And then by the end of it, as I'm getting into the last, I'm like, I hate this journal. Burn it. I'm not releasing it. I never want to look at it again because I'm so done with the season. But then tying a bow on that and wrapping up that season and going, it's okay then for the next month, I need to really decrease my work hours because it's going to come back for me again in the fall.
Yeah, that's good. I'll jump in. I think that for sure early on, I had this vision of if you're a startup and you're going to be a big business, you have to grind. This idea of hustle, this hustle, and grind, and you do not take time off because that's to one of your questions earlier and thoughts of what social media says or what whoever's is doing out there. No offense to that thought, but in my mind it was if we're gonna make it, we gotta hustle, we gotta go, we gotta grind, and that was kind of in me a little bit that if I wasn't, then we weren't going to make it. This is what we're supposed to do. And what's crazy about that, one, it's inaccurate. I think. I mean, I think that's at the very least it's not healthy for
Yeah.
a person or a business. But I had to start to step back a little bit, and even Stephanie was like, hey, you kind of like left your job and left to come work for our business, and it was going to be a better work-life balance, and you were going to be a more healthy person. Actually, the opposite ended up being true,
Yeah.
which is concerning. It's just like, she was like, why did you come to do this? And if you're not really enjoying it, and you don't really seem to have much work-life balance, and you're not healthy, and it's like, oh shoot, like so I have to figure that out. So for me personally, I've invested more time into like becoming more emotionally healthy as a person,
Yeah.
and like work is just a piece of that, and we have a family, and I want my marriage to be healthy. Like I don't want to grow a business and lose my wife. Like
Right.
that's not ideal. And so for sure
You wouldn't make it.
I actually
You
wouldn't.
would make
I wouldn't make it for sure. So you start to step back to see like, okay, what's getting back to the why of what we're doing, and how am I doing with everything, and then going, okay, the success of Duncan and Stone is not. I can't find my identity in that. You know, I think that was one thing I really struggled with, was that our business is going to like define me, or like my identity is in the growth of Duncan and Stone. That's not true. Like that can't be a true thing for me, and I got to get to the bottom of what's going on there to work through that and create more work-life balance. I would say that the past probably 6 or 7 months, I tell people, is like I've really started to enjoy our business, and which is kind of funny, but also kind of like sad. It's like for a long time, I really wasn't enjoying it. And we had to figure out some work things, and you know.
Well, a huge piece that he was doing during that season that was really hard was fulfillment. Fulfillment was in our garage. So he woke up to see it. He went to bed seeing it. He was physically moving all the boxes in and out of our garage, from storage units to warehouses that we had it put in other places across town. And so he was just in the grind. It's like moving rocks, you know, like you move rocks it's like, that's torturous if you keep doing that every single day. And it's really not what he's gifted at. He's gifted at making connections and building rapport with people. And that's one of the reasons why our company has been so successful, is he's really good at networking. And so anyways, but that got taken off of our plate in March. And so we moved to a full-time fulfillment center that receives our containers, unloads it, picks and packs it. And that completely helped reshape our company. It was the best money we've ever spent, I think,
sure.
as a company.
For sure.
I think that was one of the harder parts of work-life balance early on, was going, there is an element to being a startup where like Garrett was doing fulfillment, not because fulfillment was like what he's passionate about or gifted in, but because someone has to fulfill.
Yeah.
Right.
Because
You
we
gotta
didn't
do it.
have the money initially to be paying someone. And so to be going like, how long can you do something you don't like to make it worthwhile in the end before
Right.
you go, forget it, burn it down.
Yeah.
I don't care anymore.
He was
Yeah.
almost to burn it down.
Right. And so then we're all going, this is causing everything to be shaky, because understandably so, like he's not fulfilled. He doesn't like it.
Right.
Like, we're like high-fiving on our sales, and he was like,
Nope.
every sale I see, I have to ship
I'm gonna
it.
go move some boxes now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so he
The
couldn't
more we
even
grew,
celebrate.
the worse I felt about
Yeah,
the business.
so like Christmas
is
of
really
last
not
year,
great.
I'm like, this is amazing. I mean, like, look at our November sales and December sales, and he was like, this is terrible. Like, I mean, it was literally like he
That's
he
actually-
He's
wanted-
cheering when you didn't make any sales.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
that's not
Yes.
good.
Yeah, he was like not happy about the numbers, and so this is the first time he's getting to experience a full, not a full calendar year, but 6 months, 7 months of
Yeah.
celebrating. Like,
Yeah.
But there was that season where it was like we had to choose to put our heads down and go, this isn't good. We don't love everything about it. But if we want to get to the level where we can make enough money to pay fulfillment,
Right.
we
Yeah.
have to do fulfillment. And so figuring, you know, that was very hard to go, we have to do this hard thing to get to the next level.
Yeah.
We're not ever going to get there if we don't do this right now.
Yeah.
But it was really terrible as coworkers and as friends to watch Garrett be miserable to push us through to that level
I
so
just
that we could
envision-
rescue him in the long run.
I envision them like sipping coffee while you're like moving boxes
absolutely.
in the garage.
It's like
"Get
freezing
that one
cold. I'm
over
like,
there."
we can move this into like
go
one
do
of our
that.
bedrooms. He's like, it will not come in the house because that
don't
means
wanna
it's
see
going to
it.
stay. It's
Yeah.
not coming in the house. I was like,
Well,
okay.
I think to Sarah's point, there's a certain, everybody will go through different life stages. You know, a business or a company. Like, because I think there's something to that. Like early on in a startup, like what are you gonna do? Like we just didn't have we weren't privileged enough to be like, we outsource everything and we have this idea that we don't touch anything or do anything and we make millions of dollars. That sounds amazing. Like what is that? So I think that's a dream.
I'm driving us there.
Yeah, for sure.
Like,
Well, I think my
offer?
point is like there's certain like that's a part of our business, and a lot of early stage companies is like you got to figure it out and you got to work wild hours, and you don't really have a lot of work-life balance because like how can you? You're just trying to start this thing out of nothing.
Right. There's what you're good at, and then there's all the other hats that are left on the table that someone has to wear, even if you don't want to.
Yeah, exactly.
So now at the end of 2022, the business, like I said, it's growing. You get amazing products. What are the challenges that you're running into now?
Yeah, that's
like
a
the
good
new
question.
challenges. I mean, you've offloaded some things. You've paid money out to take care of some of the tasks that you didn't want to do anymore. What at this stage of the business? What are you running into?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I think in the same.
Go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say, in the same way that he felt a lot of things on him that we have gotten to offload, now we're looking over at Sarah and going, what's been on her plate that she's going to reach the same burnout period if we don't start offloading. And so I think,
Which is admittedly challenging because I have a small control problem with creative.
so
That's true.
I'm like, everyone just be like me, hire out what you don't like.
Yeah,
I hired
exactly.
him.
Well, I think that we're it's so funny.
Do they bully you?
Yeah, a little bit.
Garrett has started giving out demerits during our group meetings whenever we get too
We don't
sassy.
know what a demerit is, but
I don't know.
I've received a lot.
Who does HR for us?
That's me.
Okay, yeah.
He's reporting to HR, and I'm
Yeah,
like, sorry, I'm the one who
exactly.
I have an HR complaint about
Yeah,
the HR person.
Yeah. I was like, can I file a complaint to HR? She's like, sure.
She's like,
I'll
yeah, it
take
goes
it
in
here.
the trash can. Thank you for that.
Well, I think that we're at this business. We're at the stage now of our brand of going scaling, like continuing to scale in a healthy way and continuing to grow without killing ourselves, like along the way. So, you know, we're finally getting to that point of our business to be like, okay, we have a foundation of sorts. We have a great audience. We've built a community. We have great products. We have great reviews. Like, let's continue to take it to the next level and find the right partners to help us take it there. You know, so for us, we have a lot of expertise within our team, but there's a lot of stuff we don't really know how to do. And so we're now at that stage to go, okay, how do we scale in a good way and find the right partners to help us get there? Is an interesting season.
Even if you're good at something doesn't mean that you enjoy it, you know, so looking at what you can offload so we can actually like have a better work-life balance and be more present with our kids. And
well, it was something that I think we talked about a little bit before we jumped on here was, you know, building to sell, or this idea of who knows what the future of our business looks like, but building it in a way that's somebody may want to acquire us, or we want to have an exit sometime, or, you know, so building in it that way that, you know, allows us to, you know, just take it to the next level. It feels like we're, you know, just starting to grow up a little bit.
I think one of the things we learned earlier this year in terms of scaling, because I would agree, that's kind of, we've been going, how can we be more efficient? How can we get our systems in place so that we can scale? And we had some opportunities, some possibilities with some big box stores, which sounds really like great and exciting. Like if you just get an X store and you sell X number of units, you've now made millions of dollars. And it's like, oh, good, let's do that. That's a good plan. But then as we actually got into the process, realizing what it was going to really require from us. Are we capable to mass produce at this scale yet? Like we could jump at it, but what if we do it in a really messy way? And now it actually is damaging to us versus, so I think what we learned was like, even though some of that seemed really shiny and this like great opportunity, in the end, it actually would have been worse for our business to skip steps.
Right.
Instead of doing a more like slow, like, but what's the next right step for us, instead of like, yeah, but that's the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
So speaking of the ultimate goal, I mean, you mentioned potentially it'd be great to get acquired at some point. Yeah. But when you think about Duncan Stone 5-10 years from now, what are some of the things that come to mind, or things that you'd want to be true about the brand?
Yeah. What would you all say?
oh, this is easy.
I knew she's going to ask something. Go ahead, President. I knew she'd have words.
I would love to see us continue to grow. obviously, but in a way that we offloaded where we became true owners, like where Sarah was the creative director, not the creator, where she was getting to walk in the photo shoots and going, I want it this way, send me, I'll approve images, like the director of it instead of the one shooting all the photos. And so offloading and truly become owners and then workers in the things that actually bring us a lot of joy. That would be ideal in the way that I would like to see us continue to do that. But I want to make sure that we're growing our company so we can sell it if we want to. We might sell it, we might not one day, but I never want to get to the point where we're ready to exit and we have completely shot ourselves in the foot and we are not prepared to exit because we haven't structured things properly. Right. So I want to continue to structure our business where we can sell if we want to.
Or the business can't operate without you.
Yes.
Yeah,
and so
exactly.
the more that
That's
we
concerning.
work our way out of the company, though, and we become true owners, it becomes more appealing to a buyer. So if they look at it and they're like, oh, we could buy this company, but the owners are all fully working in the company,
Right.
That's not very appealing to somebody who'd want to acquire you.
Right.
Sarah, what would you say? 5 to 10 years?
No, yeah, I would say the same. I came from stay-at-home mom and side hustle, and now doing this full time. I never had. I wouldn't say I've ever been driven to have a long-term career path per se of where Garrett I think is more I want to take ownership of something. I wanted to start something and say it was mine and lead with it. I'm just kind of I really like making pretty things that make people happy. And so for me, yeah, I'm kind of let's ride it until we're ready to roll out into something else. And I would love in the long term my focus would be eventually coming full circle and being able to work less, spend more time with my family. Kind of back to what we were talking about earlier, doing the hard things right now to get to the next step where the end goal.
Yeah.
And we see glimpses of this even as summer came through this year because we had a fulfillment team where we kind of sat down as a team and we're our kids are all home for the summer. We're going to cut back work hours. It's our slow season anyway. And so our workload was very light through the summer. We went on a 17-day road trip with our kids. And we're Sarah, let us know if something's happening over there that you need us to look at. And he got in on his computer and we worked, maybe a couple hours at nights whenever it was needed. But for the most part, we could do that whenever.
Feels like we're
during the
finally
summer.
Seeing the fruits of that labor of
Yes.
the first 2.5 years of
grind.
Yes.
That was never ever an option before March. We couldn't hardly leave for a weekend without being stressed whenever we came back home. And so that was a huge shift in March to move to fulfillment team.
Gary, what about you? 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I would say, I think there's multiple different paths I think that we could end up going down. I think we're, I'd see us becoming continuing to grow the brand and, reach people and create great items and things like that. I would think over time we'll probably, to Stephanie's point, become more of owners of the business and not running it day to day. So, I'll tell you, it's been fun. I think there's a lot of new challenges that we're facing as a team, and I don't, for sure the next few years have any desire to not work on the business. So it's really fun to keep growing it and figure it out.
Well, you just got to the
It's fun.
season that you really
I'm actually
like
enjoying it. Yeah, I know.
So.
Well, thank you guys for coming on the show today. It was so great learning about Duncan and Stone, and I wish you all well
Thanks for having us, man.
in the next steps.
Yeah,
So,
sounds great.
hey, for you guys listening, don't forget you can check out duncanandstone.com. In fact, you can get free shipping on orders of $65 and more. Again, it's duncanandstone.com. It's going to be down in the episode description below, so you can check out more there. Also, I'll put social media links as well for you guys to check that out as well. And don't forget, if you like the podcast and you want to support the podcast, you can check out our Patreon. It's at patreon.com/goodadvice. Or if you want to advertise on the podcast, you can reach out at blake@goodadvicecoaching.com. Last thing I'll say is, if you love the podcast and you're not subscribed to the podcast, what the heck you waiting on? Click the subscribe button or the follow button so we can keep bringing you good advice wherever you are. That's today's good advice. We'll catch you later. See ya. All right. Great job,
That was
guys.
awesome.